You check the price of something you bought a year ago, maybe a coffee, a flight, a bag of groceries, and for a second you genuinely can't believe it. You remember paying less, you're certain of it, and your first instinct is that someone is responsible, a corporation squeezing margins, a government printing too much, someone to blame. That instinct isn't crazy, but it's only ever part of the story, because underneath all of that, underneath the greed, the policy mistakes, the supply chain chaos, there's something much older and much stranger at work, a mechanism so deeply built into how modern money functions that even if you fixed everything else, this would still be happening. What you're about to understand will completely change how you read a price tag. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong. Inflation is not prices going up. That's what it looks like from the outside, but that's not what it is. Inflation is money becoming worth less, slowly, quietly, every single year. Think about it this way. Imagine the economy as a swimming pool and money is the water. When governments and central banks need to stimulate growth, they add more water. More money circulates. More is lent, spent, created. The pool gets fuller, but the pool, the actual stuff you can buy with that money, the goods, the services, the labor, doesn't grow at the same rate. So each unit of water, each dollar, each pound, each euro represents a slightly smaller share of everything in the pool. That coffee didn't get more expensive. Your money got lighter. This is the part that makes people uncomfortable when they really sit with it. The system is not broken when prices rise. It is, in a very specific sense, supposed to work this way. Central banks in most developed economies actually target inflation. 2% per year is the goal, not zero, not price stability, a slow, managed, continuous reduction in what your money is worth. You weren't told this in any lesson that mattered, but someone decided long before you started earning that your money would lose roughly half its purchasing power over the course of your working life. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. If you asked most people why we need inflation at all, why we can't just keep prices stable, they'd look at you like you'd asked why we can't just have the sun stay up longer. It feels like a law of nature. It isn't. The reason economists fear deflation, falling prices, more than inflation is one of the most counterintuitive ideas in all of economics, and it starts with a simple question. What do you do when you know something is going to be cheaper next month? You wait. Seems obvious, seems rational, and it is for you. But when everyone waits, companies sell less. When companies sell less, they cut costs. When they cut costs, they cut wages and jobs. When wages fall and jobs disappear, people spend even less. Prices fall further, people wait longer. The whole system folds inward on itself like a slow implosion. This is called a deflationary spiral, and economists call it one of the hardest economic conditions to escape. Japan spent close to 30 years trying to fight its way out of one. Interest rates at zero, then below zero, government debt that climbed to over twice the size of the entire economy, and still, growth sluggish, prices flat, consumer confidence hollowed out, a country where people were so conditioned to expect tomorrow's prices to be lower than today's that they'd stopped believing in spending at all. The truth is this: the reason you feel robbed every time prices rise is because the alternative is genuinely worse. The inflation you hate is the grease that keeps the machine from seizing, but that's still not the whole story. It sounds simple until you follow it all the way down. Every price you pay is also somebody's income. The coffee costs more, but the person who grew the beans got paid more. The driver who delivered them got paid more. The barista behind the counter is earning more than they were 3 years ago. Pull on any price rise and somewhere in the chain you find a wage, and wages, once they go up, almost never come back down. This is called wage price stickiness, and it's one of the most well-documented and quietly consequential features of modern economies. Workers accept pay cuts in genuine emergencies, a company on the brink, a crisis with no alternative. But under normal conditions, a salary reduction feels like a punishment even when it's a rational response to falling prices. It violates something psychological, something about fairness and status and what we feel we've earned. So employers don't cut wages, they cut staff, cut hours, cut investment. The wage floor stays where it is, which means the cost base of almost every product and service you buy has a ratchet built into it. It clicks up, it doesn't click back. In 2021, the Federal Reserve, along with most central banks globally, described the post-pandemic inflation spike as transitory. The assumption was that once supply chains recovered, prices would normalize. Some did, but the wages that had risen to meet higher prices, those stayed. The new cost structures businesses had built around higher labor costs, those stayed. The prices that had risen to cover those wages, largely those stayed too. The Fed was right that the spike was temporary. It was wrong, or at least incomplete, about what temporary meant for the price level itself. Once the ratchet clicks, it holds. But wait, because I'm going to tell you something that may genuinely bother you. You've probably thought this at some point, maybe recently. If technology keeps getting better, if factories get more efficient, if automation cuts labor costs, if global competition keeps driving producers to do more with less, Why aren't things getting cheaper? Shouldn't progress make everything cheaper over time? In some cases it does. The clearest example is anything in electronics. The phone in your pocket is thousands of times more powerful than hardware that would have cost millions of dollars 30 years ago. Televisions, laptops, solar panels. In categories where the product itself is pure technology, prices have collapsed dramatically and kept collapsing. But in most of the categories that actually dominate your budget, housing, healthcare, education, food, energy, efficiency gains don't become cheaper prices. They become something else entirely. Sometimes they become profit. A company finds a way to produce something at half the cost. Shareholders benefit. The consumer price barely moves. Sometimes they become quality. The product gets imperceptibly better. A slightly improved formula, a marginally larger portion, a new feature nobody asked for, and the manufacturer uses that as justification to hold or raise the price. You're not paying more for the same thing. You're paying the same for a slightly different thing. The price never had to fall. And sometimes, this is the one that really sticks, efficiency gains get competed away in the form of marketing, real estate, and complexity. The food industry is more efficient than it has ever been in human history. It is also one of the most advertising-intensive, packaging-intensive, brand-intensive industries on Earth. The savings from scale get poured back into the fight for your attention on a supermarket shelf. The price stays where it is. There's a concept economists call Baumol's cost disease, named after economist William Baumol, who identified it in the 1960s. His observation was elegant and slightly maddening. In sectors where productivity genuinely can't improve, a surgeon still takes the same time to perform an operation as they did 50 years ago. A teacher still needs the same hours to teach a class. A plumber still needs to physically show up. Prices rise not because those sectors got less efficient, but because wages across the whole economy rose. The surgeon needs to be paid more because everyone else is being paid more. The cost of human time goes up everywhere, even where human time can't be optimized away. This is why a dentist appointment costs what it costs. Not greed, not inefficiency, just the invisible tide of wages lifting all boats, including the ones that can't sail any faster than they already do. Technology didn't fail to make things cheaper. It made some things dramatically cheaper and left the rest to be carried upward by everything around them. But zoom out for a second. There's one more layer to this, and it's the one that makes the whole picture click. You live inside the system that inflation built. Your salary, if it's kept pace, is higher than it would have been in a world of flat prices. The house you own, or hope to own, is worth more than it cost because money erodes and hard assets hold. If you've ever borrowed money, a mortgage, a student loan, anything repaid over years, you paid it back in dollars that were worth slightly less than the ones you borrowed. The debt shrank in real terms while you weren't looking. That's not an accident. That's the system working in your direction. Inflation isn't just something that happens to you, in ways you probably don't track day to day. It also works for you, and it's up to you how you use it. The system isn't broken, it's just indifferent. So next time you check that price, the coffee, the flight, the grocery receipt you stare at for a second too long, what you're looking at isn't a mistake or a crime or a failure. It's the accumulated weight of every wage that didn't fall, every efficiency gain that became profit instead of savings, every extra unit of money that quietly entered the pool while you weren't watching. Nothing ever gets cheaper because cheaper, at scale, has consequences nobody actually wants to live through. The price went up. Your instinct said someone did this to you. Maybe the stranger truth is that the system doing it is partly running on your behalf, and has been the whole time.